Hi Detroit, my name is Mike Young and I run Magic Helicopter Press. Thanks so much to MC for organizing this panel. Thanks to the Allied Media Conference for hosting it. All the other panelists, some really amazing people on this panel, and everybody who showed up. What I want to talk about with Magic Helicopter Press and the idea of, what's a micropress nowadays, what is its relevance and methodology in the, contemporary economic moment. I want to talk a little bit about how we try to imagine every book that we launch into the world as this object that will sort of catalyze a gathering of people, sort of like every book throws its own party, but of course not every book is festive, and has that tone. But I think a lot about the journey of a book through the people it encounters, and both like what people it's trying to encounter and the people along the way, like at warehouses, at the post office, at all the spots that maybe we forget about because they're not like part of the fun artisanal labor of micropresses. But before we get to that, I just want to show you a couple books that we've done and a couple examples of projects that we've done to try to sort of initiate a gathering of people around them. And so the first one I want to show you is this book of poems and art by Christine Friedlander called Avant-Gaz. And for Avant-Gaz, we made a website called the Gauze Scroll. And the way the Gauze Scroll worked is that Christine made this scroll of gauze and taped lines to it. We cut up the scroll, sent the little bits to people who pre-ordered the book, and then they could log in and respond to the bits with their own new photos or responses, and they would only sort of see how everything came together once everybody had put in their own bit. And that sort of dovetailed with some of the ideas of like how trauma is self-contained and collectively rehearsed, and who owns what trauma, and a lot of things I think that you as very smart people can just sort of start thinking about from seeing this. And this was sort of the site of that gathering, And the next book I want to show you is a book that sort of just came out, and it's sort of hard to see the cover because it's nice and shiny, almost opaque, but you can see it there. And it's called Object Permanence. How about that? Can you see that? Yeah. Oh, how about that? Object Permanence by Hassana Suncian. And she did something very cool for the readings for this book. What she did was, instead of just reading in a room, she would go to a city and collaborate with poets who lived in that city, and organize a walking tour. She would say, like, where should we walk? This is your city, what should we do? And they would walk and read poems and maybe sit in spaces and have these sort of engaged encounters. And it made a lot of sense with the book and represented sort of a gathering of the book, because a lot of these poems sort of feel like going through a neighborhood and sort of looking in the windows and sort of being really curious and open about who might live there, and how time might happen in a neighborhood when you're not walking through there. And the last book I want to show you is a novel we put out several years ago by Jordan Mason. And they're a Canadian musician and novelist. And this book is about 3 young people who live in a town where the power company burns down, and they sort of find their way in the dark. They melt into each other. They try to navigate all these interpersonal and geographical spaces. And so what we did was we came up with this idea where Jordan made a map, started a map with some special locations from the book. And we sent it in the mail to the person who pre-ordered, and then they would add something to the map and mail that to the next person. And it was this sort of mail art game that, yeah, again, was part of this gathering around the book, and fit with the ideas of navigation and sort of forming collectives through how you figure out movement through a sort of conceptual space, I guess. And why do all these things with these books when people can just sort of get them and read them, and maybe if they like them, they can just tell their friend, like, oh, that was a cool book I read. Oh, you should read it too. I think because as a micropress and sort of as a venture that isn't, by nature of our size and our reach, ever going to compete with larger ventures that can really perpetuate the book as this sort of commodity, right? I just felt like I wanted to if this space was going to be this alternative space, I wanted it to feel like how I wanted people to gather. And I just want to have house parties all the time. And I want all culture, ideally, to exist, in a house party. And people can't live in my house all the time because it's too small and it's not where they are. But if I'm, as a micropress, removed from these sort of currents of main economy, and I can dream up more idealistic ways of putting books into the world, that's how I wanted to do it. I wanted to imagine these sort of house gatherings, and I wanted each book to sort of have its own house, and the gatherings and the ways that we got those books into the world were like designing what those houses look like around the books. So that's our idea of what a micropress can be. And I also really like talking to people at the post office. Those are my thoughts, and thank you so much for watching this, which has gone 3 minutes over the time limit. But hopefully I won't have to show it to you at all, and I'll just be there in person on the screen. Alright, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to what everybody else has to say.